long days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a doof media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. I am your host, constant reader Scott Daly, and I'm joined, as always, by my chum, Matt Freeman.
Don't call me chum.
Don't call me chum, pal.
Okay.
You just gave up on that so quickly. This week on the show, we are continuing our coverage of Stephen King and Peter Straub's The Talisman with chapters 37 through 40 of the book. Back in our world at last, Jack finally reaches the Pacific Ocean and the Black Hotel guarding the whole purpose of his quest, the Talisman. The end is almost near, Matt. What did you think of this week's reading?
This is some good stuff, some intense stuff. I mean, we're seeing Jack having reached a kind of, heroic form of himself. And the text is actually pretty explicit about that, by the way. I was sort of sick the entire last week, so often with the fever. So I may have hallucinated like half of the things that happened that I remember happening in this week's reading. So if I say something that happened and it didn't actually happen, that's probably what we're dealing with. But not a big deal.
And in the grand tradition of our podcast together, I will not tell you you're wrong. And so then everyone can make fun of you.
That would be appreciated, yes.
Yeah, you're
because
welcome.
there's not enough memes about me yet.
I think what this does is just puts you in the mindset of Richard Sloat during the whole course of this week's reading. Because maybe you were equally sick. Maybe
so. Maybe this is what it's like when you're oh my God, you're right. I was like spiritually syncing up with Richard Sloat.
Yeah, or your dad did this to you and you should be very upset with him.
My dad did this to me. I think I'm sick because of this book. Oh my God. It didn't occur to me until now.
Well, there you go. Matt, we've got to get into the reading, but I did have a couple things I wanted to talk about first. The first thing is our April Fool's joke, which I thought about whether or not we were going to actually ever reference that we did that thing. And I decided, I guess right now that we're going to do it.
What April Fool's joke?
That, when we said we were going to watch the Dark Tower movie,
I forgot that we were going to watch the entire Dark Tower movie minute by minute. When are we going to record the next episode?
Well, tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow.
All right.
Have you watched the second minute yet?
No.
Yeah, me neither. And my rental has expired, so we're just gonna have to keep renting the movie each week to watch the next minute.
In all seriousness, we hope everyone enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I think you came to me on like the 30th and were like, should we do an April Fool's thing? And I was like, I don't know. Do you have any ideas? And we tossed around a few ideas, and this is the one we came up with. And I thought it was funny. The response was very positive. So thank you to everyone who enjoyed that. I don't think we got too many messages from people that were angry at us stopping the Talisman. I think everyone got that it was a joke. Yeah. I think we leaned into it hard enough that everyone got that.
Yes, thank God.
But that was a lot of fun. We really, sat down to record that and had no idea what we were going to actually do. And I thought it turned out pretty good. So
yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was good fun. I think the idea kind of came from, did you know that those are real podcasts before I told you that there are podcasts that like break movies down 1 minute an episode?
No, I don't think I knew that before you told me about it.
It's fascinating. I've never actually listened to them, but I'm kind of inherently fascinated by how that would possibly work in an entertaining way, which is kind of where this whole thing came from. And I'm not saying they're not entertaining podcasts. Like I said, I've never listened to them. I have no idea, but I just I think about the idea and I'm like, could you really do that for a whole movie?
Yeah, because you and I have thought a little bit about the idea of there is sort of an optimal chunk size to break a story into to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I just doubt that optimal chunk size is 1 minute chunks of film.
Yeah.
But maybe you're wrong.
I don't know. Let's go listen to the Star Wars Minute. I don't know if that's one. I think it might be.
Probably is. There's a podcast for everything.
That is very true. So thank you again for all the positive and funny comments on our stupid funny joke. We appreciated that very much. Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we had to talk about here, Matt, is Stephen King just had to open his fucking mouth. And I want to point out that I pulled this tweet down, Matt, and it does not say April 1st on it. It says March 31st. Therefore, we cannot just say this is an April Fool's joke. But we had to talk about this. Of course we did, because Stephen King, I guess he was just sitting at home finishing his writing for the day and thought, maybe I'll fuck around on the internet for a little bit. And he tweets the following. Screen Rant asks the question America cares about most, not who is the greater villain, Randall Flagg or Pennywise? Have they not considered the possibility that they are the same entity? So, first of all, before we have any further conversations about this, Stephen King is joking. He's not being serious. This is very obvious. I thought it was immediately obvious to me. I think it was immediately obvious to everyone else. But who cares? Because it's fun to then go, what if they are? Yeah.
So I didn't reply to this tweet, but my inclination was to reply like totally dead, dead serious. Like, no, they're not. Because I mean, I don't know. Obviously, it's to be funny, but like the point being that, like, well, I mean, as far everything we know about Randall Flagg is that he's a man who then, some shit happened to him over the course of his life, and everything we know about Pennywise is like probably some kind of toad-ash being. But also we know all kinds of weird contradictory stuff about Randall Flagg. That's
true.
So
I'm just really gonna enjoy the moment when he finally writes his book on Randall Flagg, and he somehow also makes him Pennywise. I mean, the fun thing about this is we have not read it yet together, right? And you have not read it at all. But one day when you read it, the entire time you're turning these pages, you're gonna be like, what if this motherfucker is Randall Flagg? What if he is? And you're going to be looking for the signs and the hints that he dropped in 1984 before he even really had this idea. But they're going to be there.
Yeah. I mean, if the Dark Tower binds all of his stories together, then does that mean that Randall Flagg is also present in manifesting in the villainous role?
I like to think he was thinking about Scott Wampler from the Kingcast's question about whether Pennywise and Dandelo are the same being. The question that caused Stephen King to say, shut up, nerd. Or get a life, I think it was. I like to think he was channeling that question when he made this tweet in a joking manner. Because that's hilarious to me. But I think you should have done your absolutely deadpan. No, they're not.
Let's go back and do it.
It's a little too late now.
A week late. That'll be even better. Yeah.
The problem is you'd get someone responding to you thinking you were being serious. Be like,
I know.
Are you really going to tell the author he's wrong? And then your response should be yes.
Yes.
Because honestly, we got an email from a listener who's probably not going to hear this for a while because they're still working their way through our old episodes, but saying that they listened to a Stephen King audiobook where he calls Cuthbert Cuthbert and reminded us once again that we were wrong about the pronunciation. And I have to remind that listener and everyone once again that is wrong. Stephen King is the one that is wrong about the pronunciation. He's just wrong. I mean, it's sometimes in life you're wrong. And this is the one time Stephen King has been wrong. But nothing else. This is it. This is the one time.
We try to be good hosts, but we just have this one pet peeve where
I draw a line.
Pet peeve is the wrong word. It's more like just a terrible flaw of character that we have where we're just going to say things the way we're going to say them.
Well, I mean, here's the deal though. Cuthbert is stupid and Cuthbert is awesome.
Yeah.
So that's really the decision made.
You should have put an E. You should have put an E in there if you wanted it to be Cuthbert.
Or he should have just not named a character Cuthbert because that's a terrible name. And apologies to all the Cuthberts out there. I'm sure there are a lot of you.
Yeah. If anybody out there is named Cuthbert, please let us know.
Yeah.
I'll send you a free mug.
I'm gonna have another kid, and I'm gonna name him Cuthbert, and he's gonna hate me for it, and I'll be like, I know. This is my long long-term plan to teach Stephen King that he's wrong about how he pronounced it.
Hold on, are you going to name him Cuthbert or are you going to name him Cuthbert?
I'm going to name him Cuthbert.
Okay.
And then I'm going to introduce him to Stephen King when I meet him one day, which of course will happen. And I'm going to say, "This is my son Cuthbert," and he's going to have a reaction to that, and the reaction is going to be, "Really?" And I'm going to say, "See, I told you. Wouldn't it be better if his name was Cuthbert?"
All of his teachers are going to call him Cuthbert because it's obviously
they are. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the Talisman. How about that?
Okay.
So we begin this week's reading with chapter 37, titled Richard Remembers. And oh boy, does he, because this is an entire chapter of Richard reliving his childhood. And it was a happy one, but it's a little colored now by the truth he's learned.
Yeah.
Our chapter begins proper with the boys finishing their flip back to our world, but something really weird happens here, Matt, and I think this is worth really talking about, and I think it has to do with how close we are to the end of our quest here. Because when they flip, they find themselves in a place that looks very similar to the territory's wolf fort that they were just fighting all those wolves at, but it has aged. It is old and abandoned now, and we see here at the beginning that Jack is initially so confused that he thinks that they did not travel through space this time. They traveled through time. He has taken them to the future, which would just be absolutely ridiculous, right?
Yes. Yes, what a ridiculous thought to be having in the course of trying to sort out questions about where did the territories come from. I honestly don't know if the authors are being tongue-in-cheek there or if it's, tongue-in-cheek with respect to what, because Dark Tower doesn't exist yet. So
yeah,
I guess it's just like my take here was this is more stuff with like thinnies and things swapping between worlds, based on unique qualities in certain places or certain people or certain objects or what have you.
Yeah, the closer we get to the Talisman, the more blending of reality is happening, and so it's not very surprising here that we have two places that the differences between territories and Earth are starting to go away a little bit. And I think this is really fitting because it's something we talked about last week, where the differences between Jason and Jack are starting to go away a little bit here. We also see the difference between Sunlight Gardener and Osmond are starting to go away a little bit here, right? So it seems like the closer we get to the end of our quest, this duality that we've talked about is just kind of going away.
It's true. The one asterisk that I'll put there is like, and it's also a question mark. It's a question mark asterisk. Those.
Yeah, those are totally normal punctuation marks.
Is Richard, because I don't understand what the story is doing with Richard specifically, and like he's an element where he also had, as we're going to talk about in a minute, he is also like a single natured person, but he is not reacting well to what they're doing.
Yeah.
The closer they get to the I'm going to call it the Dark Tower, because the closer they get to the the pillar of the universe, the worse he gets. And I guess we'll just put a pin in that. We'll come back to it when we get back to talking about Richard.
Sure. Talking about Richard in a little bit of a different way, though.
Yeah.
This is something we talked about before, but I wanted to highlight it here again. The relationship, the friendship between Richard and Jack has kind of become really the focal point of the second half of the book, right? And something that you might not have expected going into the story was how much this friendship and this relationship between these two boys matters to the story as we start to get to the finish line here. And I really love here we see once again the way they are very jokey and friendly, and kind of the friendly ribbing that's going on here, because we see here in this moment the text says, "Up you go and up you get, Richie boy. We've got promises to keep, miles to go before we sleep, and you are still an utter creep." Richard winced. Whomever gave you the idea you had a sense of humor should be shot, chum. Bites mon crank, mon ami. And I just love this because I just want you to like go back in time to when we started this book and imagine the Jack you met on the East Coast in this beachside town, like doing these play on words, poem references, and then jokey French like ribbing. Like just imagine that kid we met back then behaving this way. and I just don't think I think it would be totally incongruous for you.
Absolutely, yeah, for all sorts of reasons. Like,
Yeah.
you know, at that point, he was also like terrified and heartbroken because he knew his mom was dying and there was nothing he could do about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is certainly the highest spirits we've seen Jack in through the whole story.
Sure.
You know, and I think, you know, he has accepted the risks. He has conquered his fear. He has become Jason. If it all feels very earned, it feels very organic.
Yeah.
And you know, it's great.
It is, and I think using Richard as a way to reflect that is such a fun idea to me, because we have these two kids, and I think we talked about this when we originally brought up this idea, but just the idea that when you have a friend that you haven't seen in a while, as a kid, there is a way where you can just very easily kind of slip back into the pattern of your friendship, even though you haven't seen each other in a long time. And I think that is absolutely the type of thing we're seeing here. And so using the chummy, ribbing friendship of two young boys, you know, who have spent the last few chapters feeling each other out and are now just fully used to each other again and are in a little bit higher spirits and having fun with each other, or at least on one end of that. I don't know if Richard is in high spirits right now, but on one end of that, I think using their chummy relationship as a reflection of Jack's changing nature, I think is really, really smart.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So the other thing we have to talk about here with this flipping, this bit that honestly confused me when I read it a bit here, is Jack looks and sees the train here as well. And we have this text. I want to read it, and then I want to try to parse this with you a little bit. He stood there for a moment looking at it. Stubby engine, empty boxcar, flat car. Had he somehow managed to flip this whole thing into Northern California? He didn't think so. Flipping with Wolf had been a chore. Dragging Richard into the territories from the Thayer campus had nearly torn his arm out of its socket, and doing both had been a conscious effort on his part. So far as he could remember, he hadn't been thinking of the train at all when he flipped, only getting Richard out of the Wolves' paramilitary training camp before he saw his old man. Everything else had taken a slightly different form when it went from one world to the other. The act of migrating seemed to demand an act of translation as well. Shirts might become jerkins, jeans might become woolen trousers, money might become jointed sticks. But this train looked exactly the same here as it had over there. Morgan had succeeded in creating something which lost nothing in the migration. So I think this is really interesting, right? Because we start the sentence, the paragraph with, "Did I bring this here?" And then Jack says, "No, I don't think I did. But it is here." How did the train get here?
Yeah, I mean, the best stab I can take is there's something either about the train or about the terminus points on the train's journey that form a natural thinny. You know, the train sort of exists in both worlds at once, in some sense. You know, I mean, so we did. I don't think we fully answered the question of like, how did they manage to get the Uzis into the territories? And maybe the answer is, you know, well, either at the terminuses or it could just be a feature of the train itself.
Sure.
You know, maybe something that Sloat did to the train gave it this property of being, you know, single natured, or maybe he used some aspect of the, you know, the talisman itself to impart this power on the train. I don't know. I might be getting too theory crafty there, but I'm inclined to think that it's something about the train, specifically because Sloat was talking about how he was just so proud of the train. He was more proud of the train than he was of his own son. And it's like, it's just a train. It's a shitty train, actually. So like,
it's not a great train. Yeah.
What's so great? And it's like, well, he did something magical to it,
right?
Which actually is probably why it's, you know, destroying the train was probably a good thing in and of itself, actually.
Yeah, this idea that the train symbolizes more than just this thing that you know, I built in the territories, but that I had to do something special and important to make this work the way it works. I think you might be onto something there. I mean, I think the other thing we should point out here that is the thing that Jack points out when he's trying to process this whole thing is that the wolves in the territories were wearing jeans, were wearing blue jeans, and that is, as is stated here, that is one thing we know, that, you know, when Wolf flipped over, his clothing changed. When Jack flipped over, his clothing changed. And so whatever's going on with this Wolf army that Morgan has gathered together, they are breaking those rules. And you're right. Whether there's something specific to the train itself, something specific to this spot right here, something specific to Point Venuti or to the talisman itself, we don't know. But I think overall, outside of all our fun theory crafting, the point of this is that Morgan has figured out how to do something, and it is setting the stage for this idea that the differences between the territories and our world are going away. And I think it's laying the groundwork for the moment where we suddenly see, oh, there are territory trees here now, that these worlds are kind of mushing together in very important ways. And now so the train, of course it's in both worlds because the worlds are mushed together. It's the train. It just exists now. There's no difference between the territories in our world anymore.
And I guess we know that they could take material objects between the worlds a long time ago because Bill Sawyer gave Wolf Oshkosh Bagosh what's the jumper, whatever it's called, the overalls.
The overalls, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was a physical object that they maybe they were only just figuring out how to do it back then.
Maybe this is the secret to what Morgan has been working on. We'll have to keep that in mind as we move forward.
I keep wondering if the key has to do with it, the key that he has,
the one that turns into the lightning rod.
Yeah, which maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Yeah, we got some emails and some comments from some people that were, trying to parse that it seems like Morgan has multiple ways of entering the territories, right? That he's got his close his eyes and open them in Morgan of Orris, but also he has that and the raping, as the book continually calls it, as he moves through the world. So
yeah.
We haven't seen Morgan himself mention that he has more than one way of doing this, which would be a little unusual to me if he did have these two methods when he was talking and laying out the details of how he migrates. If I would assume that he would have broken down those different ways, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah, I believe the next chapter is an interlude, so maybe some things will be cleared up.
Yeah, could be. We'll the interludes have kind of served as our exposition dumps, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So Jack and Richard then decide to open fire on their friendly old train. They pull out some Uzis and they shoot at the C4 and they blow up the train. And I love the idea that the train is continually blowing up for a very long time, even as they walk away, because the C4 keeps exploding.
Uh-huh.
But of course, this is important because remember in the interlude last week, it said Morgan Sloat loves this thing more than his son. And heartbreakingly, we can kind of tell that Richard might know that on some level.
Yeah.
Because I think he says, my dad's not going to be happy you blew up his train, Jack. This very serious way of stating that he's not going to be happy.
Yeah. The train's definitely important to all of his long-term plotting. So,
yeah.
But it is very satisfying. And it's also very funny how they don't quite realize how dangerous it is to fire at a big pile of high explosives.
Yeah, they were so close to it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So with the train having blown up, our adventurers head back out on the path towards their finish line. And I think we have to talk here. Richard was fairly sick last week, right? We talked about how he seemed to be getting sick. We talked about how maybe he was allergic to the territories, was kind of what we supposed at the time. He's back home now, right? And yet the sickness keeps getting worse. And we see here at the beginning that he is at the point where right now he can barely stand. And so Jack puts him on his back here. And the text says, "Shades of Wolf," he thought. And I love this because we talked last week about how there was very clearly a comparison being made here between Jack and Wolf and then Jack and Richard, right? Two members of his quartet that he met at different points in his journey that both existed to kind of slow Jack down in different ways. Like the difficulties that they presented made his journey more challenging.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think this comparison here where Jack is now picking up Richard and having him ride piggyback, to me, makes it clear what we're actually doing with these two characters and why we're echoing these beats. As Jack will state himself later on, that Richard is the herd now, right? So with Wolf, Jack was the herd, and with Richard, Jack has become the shepherd, right? And I think that's really important here, because it's almost as if Wolf's purpose in the story was to teach Jack how to be a shepherd, to teach Jack how to do these things, how to be this way, how to be that kind of person. And now he's getting tested on those teachings right away with Richard here.
Yeah, I think that's why it was important that the text specifically lay out that Wolf was noble. He was this noble creature, because it was Wolf teaching Jack how to be noble.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, yeah.
And I love this text right here, Matt. I love this so much. Carrying Richard seemed to be no problem at all, and not just because Richard had lost weight. Jack had been running kegs of beer, carrying cartons, picking apples. He had spent time picking rocks in Sunlight Gardener's far field. Can you give me hallelujah? It had toughened him, all of that. But the toughening went deeper into the fiber of his essential self than something as simple and mindless as physical exercise could go. Nor was it all of a simple function of flipping back and forth between the two worlds like an acrobat, or of that other world, gorgeous as it could be, rubbing off of him like wet paint. Jack recognized in a dim sort of way that he had been trying to do more than simply save his mother's life. From the beginning, he had been trying to do something greater than that. He had been trying to do a good work. And his dim realization now was that such mad enterprises must always be toughening.
Yeah,
it's beautiful writing. It's fucking beautiful.
I love it, and it's true, and it's a in text, succinct and beautiful articulation of, I think, an idea that we've been commenting on over time. But it's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that with you a bit. And I know we've touched on this before, so I won't spend too much time on it. But it really does fascinate me. You know, when I read other books, when I read books for book club, or I think about the other books that we've done this kind of show on before, I feel like a lot of times those books, it's not that they mask their themes, but they always seem to shy away from just stating them, you know, that this idea that something is more literary if it doesn't state its themes. But I don't think King operates on that level. And I think when he recognizes something is important and something, he wants you to get something, he wants you to get an essential nature of what the story he's doing is, he will just come out and say it. Like the idea that we are meant to draw a comparison between Jack and Wolf's relationship and Richard and Jack's relationship. Like the book just tells you that, right? Like he puts Wolf on, or he puts Richard on his back, and the line says shades of Wolf. Like the book is saying, look, link this back to Wolf. And this here, like the whole book, you and I have been talking about the fact that this journey is more than just getting to an endpoint, more than just crossing America. It is the road of trials. It is the hero's journey. It is the learning something and experiencing things that create a new, better, more powerful, more noble, as you aptly said, person. And they don't want you to not get that. And so why not just say it? And that is absolutely what they do here. And it works on both levels, because it is telling you, the reader, and is also allowing Jack to recognize this thing about himself, which is an important to the character's arc as well, that he recognizes that this thing has happened to him.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you said about, you know, a lot of books we read where you can figure out what the themes are, but very often you're like, you know, you can nail it in more explicitly. And, you know, it doesn't, I think that it's a fear of less experienced writers that they're going to be seen as, being obvious or something. Mm-hmm, it's like you're just being clear. I mean, And
don't get me wrong, I don't need every book I read to state its themes, right? I do have plenty of enjoyment out of reading something that isn't quite clear and kind of trying to parse the meaning for myself and come up with what this book means to me. And I still think even in a book like this that does state its themes pretty clearly, you can still pull out other meanings and interpretation and stuff from that. I'm not saying that this is the best way to do story, right? I'm not saying that at all. But I do appreciate this for what it is, in that, you know, we don't have to question, did we get this one right, Matt? No, we did. Look, here's Peter and Steve saying it right here.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, this is still Jack having a realization and thinking through this. It's not it's not the narrator turning to us and saying, the thing that I was trying to do here was to show the process of how he is spiritually enriching it. No, it's so like, yeah, there's this is an elegant way of doing it.
Yeah. And that's what makes it work, right? That it it is actually important to the theme of the hero's journey that the hero realize what they've become. And so in order to do that, you kind of have to state your hero's journey theming pretty explicitly. And so that's exactly what happens here.
I just had a minor insight, which is that a lot of the stories that we read concern like unlikable or unreliable protagonists.
Sure.
And the consequence of that is that you usually don't get these moments with them, because those sorts of protagonists tend to never actually have the realization that you want them to have. And so you're left in the position of being like, oh, you idiot, so that's just just a fact about how some different stories almost can't do this sort of thing.
No, I like that. So at this point of the story, Matt, Richard starts talking and revealing that he knew quite a bit more about what was going on than he was ever comfortable telling Jack. We hear here that he's seen Osmond before, and that he spent a lot of time at this Point Venuti, that he knows the Black Hotel that houses the Talisman. He's seen it many, many times. Jack's initial reaction to this is annoyance, Matt. But to be fair to Richard here for a sec, he wasn't just fighting against his rational impulses, right? He wasn't just being rational Richard here. He was dealing with the fact that the truth meant that his dad was a bad guy, that he was a bad dad. And I love how Richard states this bluntly, right? I was afraid, Richard said in a perfectly calm voice, I was afraid that if I knew more about these secret pockets, that man Osmond, or what was in that closet that time, I wouldn't be able to love my father anymore. And I was right. That's fucking tragic.
Yeah. I mean, Richard's character is tragic, and I don't really hold it against him that he didn't have the strength to deal with all this stuff as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, far more storied and accomplished characters have failed lesser challenges on the road to Cancano Ray. So Richard it's like, poor kid.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a rough position to be put into, right? And even more tragic, knowing exactly how terrible Morgan Sloat is, which we do know.
Yeah.
But speaking of Jack's frustration, we have to talk about this passage, Matt. So Jax here says, or it starts with Richard talking. Richard says, Jack, you don't No, I guess I don't. I was tired and you gave me a place to sleep. Fine. I was hungry and you got me some food. Great. But what I needed most was for you to believe me. I knew it was too much to expect, but jeepers, you knew the guy I was talking about. You knew he'd been in your father's life before, and you just said something like, good old Jack's been spending too much time in the hot sun out there on Seabrook Island and blah, blah, blah. Jesus, Richard, I thought we were better friends than that.
Jesus, Richard, indeed.
Jesus. Jesus Christ.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there. Scott, remind us what we're talking about here.
Sure. So the line here, I was hungry and you got me some food. I was tired and you gave me a place to sleep is, ladies and gentlemen, a biblical reference. Once again, we have another one here. This is from the book of Matthew, chapter 25. I think the lines are specifically for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you visited me. Something like that. The context here in the Bible is basically a vision of what heaven will look like. Basically, the Matthew 25 is offering parables about what heaven will be like. And then at the end it says, and how do we get to this awesome place? Well, at the end of your life, everyone's going to be separated into the goodies and the baddies. And the goodies will be told, look, you did all this great stuff. Come in. And I think the line here is something to the effect of, for every time you did these things to the least of me, the least of my people, you did them for me, is the Lord, is Jesus saying this to people, So this idea, it's this general idea that when you do good on earth, you are doing it to God, right? You are like the good deeds you do on earth are being done to God himself. The bad deeds you're being done on earth are being done to God himself as well, which explains why my mom told me that putting out my middle finger was saying F you to God.
That's actually
technically true, according to Matthew 25.
That's actually the only explanation I've ever heard of that made any sense.
But I mean, I think this is important though, right? Because we've talked for a while about Jack Sawyer being a not so thinly veiled Jesus analog. And we have him here, quoting Matthew 25 here, putting himself in the place of the Lord. And I think this is really interesting here, right? Because he is being dismissive of the things that the Bible is saying are the most important things you could possibly do, right? He's saying, oh, I was hungry and gave some food. Awesome. Great. What I needed you to do was believe me, which you could put the word in there and maybe it becomes a little clearly. What is most important to me is that you believe in me. Right?
Yeah. Jesus, Richard.
Yeah, Jesus, Richard, believe in me. That's all you have to do, which is very fitting to what the Bible tells you to do.
Right. So like all that said, I mean, super, yes, 100%, 110,000%, we're doing the Bible relation here. But is there like, beyond that just being kind of awesome and fun, like hammering in the connection between Jack and Jesus, like are we saying, are we actually saying that, like, I don't know what we're saying with this, am I being obtuse here, or am I trying to read more into it than what we already did read into it, which was the intended meaning?
No, I don't think you're being obtuse. I would say that you do have to squint a little bit further to try to pull exactly what the meaning out of this is in the book per se. I think one way you could argue this is you could say, hey, Jack, you're being a little unfair to Richard here, right? That you're expecting this, you're going to drop all this stuff into this guy's lap who's dealing with some pretty intense childhood trauma and has not processed that. You need to maybe learn to be a little bit more patient with him. And I think the trials and tribulations that Jack is going to go through over the next couple chapters are certainly seemingly designed to make Jack incredibly patient with Richard, because he is becoming less and less capable of taking care of himself, more and more dependent on Jack himself. And so patience and love despite difficulty seems to be a thing that Jack still needs to learn here, right? Like, I don't know, like outside of the biblical reference, my reaction to this passage was kind of like, I understand your frustration, Jack, but do you understand like how much this kid has gone through in his life? Like, your dad was awesome Phil Sawyer. Like, you don't even understand what it's like to have a dad who is a monster and how to process that. Like, your mom's a queen,
Yeah. Well, I think that so the way I take it, and riffing off what you said, is like Jack's not being particularly Christ-like here.
Sure.
He is he's not being forgiving, he's not being understanding, he's not, extending to Richard, the love of one of his children, of one of his, one of his flock. He's being somewhat demanding, actually, and Rich, and it's like, hey, he did give you a place to sleep, and he sheltered you, and he kept the wolves from eating you. Like you're not like, I think Jack is literally not even appreciating the fact that he didn't just give him a place to sleep. He like metaphysically protected him in that place. At least that was our interpretation. I don't know if the text ever said that literally, but
I don't care. It is it is our interpretation. It is the interpretation, as far as I'm concerned.
He protected Jack. So so it's not it. I think maybe the lesson here from this passage is that Jack, he's being compared to Christ, but he is not there yet.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I mean, like, that is the gut reaction to, yeah, sure, you gave me some place to sleep. Fine. I was hungry and you got me some food. Great. It's like, no, the Bible says these are the things.
Yeah.
Like,
right. Yeah. It's actually, that's kind of the point of it, is like, even relatively meager gestures toward the needy are really all you need to do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. Like the love you share to the least fortunate amongst you is directly love that you are showing to me. When you behave in this manner, you are glorifying me, basically. And he's not quite doing that. So yeah. I like it. Cool. One day we'll stop talking about the Bible so much, but here's the thing. I was talking about this because I tweeted about this while I was prepping this week's show. I think, like, regardless of what religion you are, what spirituality you have, or if any, I think reading the Bible is like a pretty important thing if you want to study literature,
Uh-huh.
because like it's the one source of reference that just about everyone in the Western world has some level of knowledge of. And so books reference it all the time, especially when you go back in time to the, the quote unquote classics of canon literature. All those people are referencing the Bible constantly.
Yeah.
And so being able to parse those references and understand those references, especially in those type of books, are very important. Here, I mean, this part could go by without you really picking up on it at all, and I think that'd be fine. I don't think the book loses anything for it, but it definitely is an enriching process. Reading it's a fascinating book, the Bible. I will say that it's really interesting.
Right. And even if literature isn't mentioning the Bible, it's mentioning like Dante, who is mentioning the Bible, right? Like you said, I mean, the whole Western literary canon is either the Bible or it's the Iliad and the Odyssey. So
yeah, that's true.
Which
Gosh,
this book is also doing, obviously. So.
That is. I think King and Straub specifically set out to do that exact thing of like,
Probably.
we haven't talked about this in a while, but do you think this is the Kingian and Straubian attempt at the great American novel that is taking, the canon of Western literature and Americanizing it in a very specific United Statesy way? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it has been said that the road trip novel is the sort of ultimate format of the great American novel.
Yeah.
I think
because it is something very unique to our country for sure.
I think I remember that being said in reference to like American Gods.
Yes. I think Gaiman is explicitly doing that. Like he said publicly that's exactly what he was doing.
So maybe that's why that popped into my head. But yeah, I mean, we're taking we are literally taking the Western literary tradition and we're writing a novel of a young man's coming of age story as he crosses the United States. So I mean, sure,
it works. It works for me. Yeah. And I like it because like with American Gods, the most fascinating thing about that was it was a British man, telling an American story, from their very not entirely unique, but fairly unique view of what it means to be an American novel, right? Both Straub and King are American, so they are doing this from inside the house.
Right. I think that the fun insight that I think Neil Gaiman had was something like America immigrants make the best Americans, or not literally that, but like that's what's interesting about America is that it's a nation of immigrants, and so an immigrant writing the great American novel is actually kind of a fitting idea.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. God, American Gods. If y'all haven't read that book, it's pretty good. Like I really enjoyed that book.
Yeah, me too.
All right, that was a very long tangent there, Matt. Moving back to the Talisman, we have here in this moment, Jack doesn't quite know, despite his frustration, I think he does kind of come around to realizing that Richard's in a really bad place, and he doesn't really know how to help Richard process the idea that his father is an evil monster, which fair, right? I don't think I would know how to do that either. Like how would I go about telling my best friend, oh yeah, that sucks, man.
Yeah, like I think Jack's plan at this point is just to kind of keep moving forward and hope that they don't actually have to run into the guy.
One thing that is interesting about this, though, Matt, is this idea that Richard, because of the experiences he's had throughout his life, has kind of known this all along. And this is less him discovering new information about his father and more being forced to reckon with the information that he knew all along, which means there's no conflict here as far as, is Richard going to support Jack or his father, right? Which side is he going to be on in this fight between Morgan Sloat and Jack Sawyer? This is absolutely a route the book could have taken, right? Like where it could have really built up tension by kind of presenting to us this idea that when the chips are down, Richard is desperate for the love of his father and will embrace his father and betray his friend, right? Going with our Christ allegory here, someone does betray him. And I'm not saying that that's definitely not going to happen in this book. There's still room for that to possibly happen. But at this point in the story, it really doesn't seem like that's the way we're going.
Yeah. I mean, if it seemed like things were going to go that way, then I think Jack would just ditch Richard, which is not at all the path that we're on. So
sure. Yeah.
I would guess that that's just not the direction they've chosen to take here.
Sure. It's interesting, like, because I think that, to me, when looking at the conflict that they built here, would be the most obvious place to go with it. And I kind of appreciate that they decided to do something else.
Yes, it's so obvious that it's boring.
Sure.
So, yeah.
But man, I just like the rest of this chapter. I really love everything that's happening here. As Jack and Richard are continuing to walk along the road heading towards the ocean. Richard is reminiscing about all his time here. He was at this place called Camp Readiness, which we learned was like a place for overweight businessmen to get in shape, but also was obviously on the second level, a place where Morgan Sloat was preparing his territory's plans, recruiting people, bringing wolves over, doing whatever it is he was doing. All this was happening in the background. And we see here that all of these things that Morgan was doing for nefarious reasons are connected to very important childhood memories for Richard. Time when he got to spend weekends with his father, going on the train, riding the train from Point Venuti to Camp Readiness, hanging out here, feeling like this was something they got to do together, just the two of them. And it's just tragic and awful. Like the book does a really good job of kind of really making you feel just the despair of Richard Sloat here. Yeah,
it's really heavy. And again, that's the interesting thing, is we brought in this character so late in the story, and that's the source of the question mark / asterisk.
Sure.
Is I'm not entirely sure what the narrative purpose or thematic purpose of Richard.
Yeah.
I kind of get it, but I think the thing is, we're not really going to understand until the story's over.
Sure.
Because we're so close to the end anyway.
Yeah, and maybe this is a question for you to keep in mind, because I don't think you can answer it yet. But like, would the story have been better served by Richard being a character much earlier in it?
Yeah, I mean. I'll keep it in mind. Yeah.
Sure. All right. And then we get this part, and I want to talk to you about this. Then Richard fell on his knees with his hair in his tired face, and Jack got down there with him. And I can bear to tell you no more, only that they comforted each other as well as they could. And, as you probably know from your own bitter experience, that is never quite good enough. So this is a break from the basic trend of the novel, right? I think I tried to do some digging in the version of the book I have, and I couldn't come up with anything definitive, but I think this is the only time in the book where the narrator like directly addresses us, the reader.
Yeah, I can't recall any other times.
Mm-hmm.
It is a good trick we've talked about before, like cutting away from something that's just too sad to show directly, to emphasize the impact of it. It's a trick we've discussed in the film context with both Shyamalan and Wes Anderson's films recently.
And King has done it before in other books as well. I think in those books, I think typically it's been established earlier in the novel that the narrator is a much more active, interacting presence with us in the course of the book. Like I'm thinking of The Eyes of the Dragon very specifically, which is kind of framed as a fairy tale being told to us, the reader.
Yeah.
This book has never been framed that way. And yet we have suddenly in the middle of it, this break of, I can't talk about this anymore. We have to move on. It's too sad. I want to leave them in their peace. It's very shocking. And I think it emphasizes the power of the moment to me.
Yeah. I love it.
I love this. I love this part here as well, Matt. You can go, Richie, Jack said quietly. It's okay by me. They'll let you go, no sweat. None of this is your business. I think maybe it is, Richard said. I dragged you into it. No, Richard said. My father dragged me into it, or fate dragged me into it, or God, or Jason. Whoever it was, I'm sticking. Is this Matt, is it possible that Rational Richard here has the best response to Ka out of any Dark Tower character we've ever seen?
I think so. Yeah.
he
Once you,
just
yeah,
he just accepts it. It's like, yeah, I'm here. Okay.
yeah. Once your foot is in the bear trap of Ka, there's nothing to do other than grimly go on.
Yeah, just I'm sticking. I love that. I love the choice there. Whoever it was, I'm sticking, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not sticking it out. I'm not sticking with you. I'm sticking. I love it.
It's great.
Richard finally tells us about the Black Hotel that holds the Talisman. We learn that it is called the Agincourt. And for some of you historians or literary scholars out there, this name might sound a little bit familiar, as Agincourt was the famous battle in which the British were heavily outnumbered, but then kicked the French's ass anyway. This is, I think, part of the 100 Years' War, I believe it was. It is one of the most celebrated British victories ever. They love it. The British love this victory, Matt, because it was pretty impressive, to be fair. And I think it was most popularized by Shakespeare's Henry V, the St. Crispin's Day speech. I don't know if have you read Henry V, Matt?
I haven't, but I'm familiar with that speech in particular.
You are?
Because
it's a classic one. Because
I had a friend who practiced it like 175 times. For a theater thing when I was in high school.
We happy few, we band of brothers.
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
Of course, performed, beautifully by Kenneth Branagh in his 1980 something adaptation of Henry V. Wonderful film, and Branagh so good at Shakespeare, so good. But anyway, what does this have to do with anything we're talking about here? I don't know. What do you think?
No idea. Literally all I know about the battle is that the French were mired in marshy ground and the English took them apart with archery.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of want to sketch something about how like the use of guns in this ensuing battle might be related. Some just like, no, it doesn't really work at all. So I really don't know.
I mean, let's say generally that when they approached the Agincourt Hotel, they are heavily outnumbered. There are way more wolf army people there than there are little Jack and Richard.
Yeah, that's true. That they are the happy few, I guess you could say.
Yes. So. But I mean, like more broadly, we have these two hotels, right? We have the Alhambra, which is the hotel on the East Coast, and we have the Agincourt, which is the hotel on the West Coast. The Alhambra, as we said when the book started, is an old Muslim fort in Spain. Agincourt, a famous British battle at a French commune. How do these two things relate to each other? Or do they even?
I don't know. I mean, they're both the sites of conflict.
That's true.
They're if they're like the two axes of the country, then Spain. I don't know if there's anything to do with like Spain versus or Muslim fort in Spain. I don't know, man. They both start with A. Like, what do you?
There you go. You cracked it. Yeah, they both start with A.
I cracked it. Just like America.
Yeah. Boom.
Sometimes we do a good job at this.
This is our job.
This is not one of those times.
So we learned that Morgan bought the Black Hotel years ago and is obsessed with it. Like creepy, like staring at it for hours on end, obsessed with it, just standing in front of there, looking at it while his poor son like looks at him through the window and is like, Dad, what's going on? And through Richard's story, we learn that the Talisman is inside the Agincourt Hotel, and we learn what the Talisman is. And Matt, you were so close. You were so close last week. Here the text says, he called it, Richard hesitated, frowning in thought. He called it the axle of all possible worlds. Then he laughed. Then he called it something else, something you wouldn't like. What was that? It'll make you mad. Come on, Richard, spill it. He called it Phil Sawyer's Folly. So, Matt, last week you said that the hotel was the Dark Tower, and you were so close. You were so close, but it is actually the Talisman itself is the Dark Tower, the axle of all possible worlds. And if you go back and listen to last week's episode, Matt, you can hear me get dangerously close to giving you a hint by reminding you that in Keystone Earth, the tower was just a rose. The representative of the tower was just a rose. I was trying to get you to think smaller, but you didn't quite get there.
No, I'm right, Scott.
Wait, no, but you said no. You're not.
No, I'm just right. No, fine. I'm going to give myself an 89% of high B.
That feels high
for saying that the hotel is the Dark Tower, because actually the Talisman is the Dark Tower, but the hotel contains the Talisman.
I feel like the best you can get is a B- on that one.
What if the actual Dark Tower, what if it's actually like Roland's blankie inside the Dark Tower that is the axis of all possible worlds, and the Dark Tower is just a building that's holding it?
It could be. The combination of bad and good all rolled up into one.
Yeah, exactly.
Roland's blankie. There we go.
Yep.
But I mean, we have to go back to that last part, right? Because we learn here that Morgan Sloat called the Talisman Phil Sawyer's Folly. And our character doesn't necessarily answer why he called it that. We don't get any kind of definitive answer on that. I think the way Jack processes that is like, oh yeah, I bet the Talisman was a lot of people's folly because a lot of people probably wanted it. But we don't actually learn why Morgan would say that. So any guesses here?
Yeah, I think it's got to be something more specific. Like I think Phil is probably the one who originally stumbled upon all the territory stuff, and maybe via the Talisman. Maybe that was how it happened originally. And maybe there was something that he wanted to do with the Talisman. He had some ambition.
I like that. And I want to say this without telling you definitively I'm saying you are right or wrong, but there is an interesting idea to this fact that Jack's reaction to this is not to pay specific attention to Morgan talking about Phil Sawyer, but to just immediately generalize it, like as in, could this mean my father is responsible for something that I don't like? And push that away immediately.
Yeah.
Don't want to deal with that. Which would sync up pretty well with Richard here dealing with the truth of that fact in the first place. And not to hop onto a fuck Phil Sawyer train, but we did learn that the reason Morgan even knows about the territories and is doing all this stuff is because Phil Sawyer got drunk one night and decided to show it to him.
Right.
So really, at the end of the day, this is all Phil's fault.
Yeah. No, it is. Like I think that is the best. The most likely theory is that Phil was the one who had the potential to do something good, and then he, I don't know, screwed it up or got arrogant,
made a mistake. Yeah.
Had hubris, whatever. Yeah.
So, but at least we have here that Jack Sawyer suddenly, without warning, understanding something that the man in black said a long time ago, right? Size, right? We've been talking about duality this whole book. We've been talking about, the territories and Earth, Jack and Jason, the duality of werewolves in themselves. But here in this moment, as we head to the end, we realize that it's more than just two, right? It's all worlds, all possibilities, all versions of Jack and Lily Sawyer, all versions of Morgan and Richard Sloat, the Black Hotel. And here we understand at last why Jack is especially special. It isn't just that he doesn't have a twinner, Matt. Jack reasons that the reason he is special is because in all versions and all realities, except for this one, Jack Sawyer's has died. And so this is the only version of Jack Sawyer that exists in all realities. It's basically just like Jet Li's The One.
Oh my God. After I saw you wrote that in the notes, Scott, I had to go watch all the scenes.
Did you
from The One, which was a movie I was obsessed with when I was a young teenager.
It's such a Matt movie. Like
it's so much worse than I remember, though. It's not a good movie. At least the least you'll say for it is that it's actually winking at the audience, like it's being silly, it's being self-consciously silly. But anyway, that makes him much more. That makes Jack much more special than just so his twin specifically in the territories died. It's like, no, he's a cosmically important figure. He is sort of on par with something like the Rose, in terms of being like a metaphysically important person.
Yeah.
So,
And we learn here that, Jack is not the only thing that is singular, right? With the talisman itself is one thing that exists in all worlds, which is unsurprising because it's the Dark Tower. But we also learn that Richard Sloat is just like him as well. That it's not just Morgan of Orris's son who died. It's that all versions of Richard Sloat have died as well. And so both of these boys are single, solitary, the only ones, and thus they are the only people in the universe that are able to enter the Black Hotel and get the talisman. Just these two.
Which is really interesting because that again, this is the main thing that I keep returning to with this idea of Richard, where it's like, if we said it was Jack and it was only Jack and Jack was the special Jesus figure, then that would make him extremely unique and special. And then almost in the same breath, story-wise, Jack is made not so special because Richard is. It's as if the Bible, portrayed the character of Jesus and then also the character of Richard, who's a guy who isn't nearly as cool as Jesus, but is also like, the metaphysical son of God or whatever. And it's like, well, so they're both unique, but they're both unique in the same way. Like, so why do this?
Praise be to Jesus Christ and his good friend Richard.
And his good friend Richard, who also was.
And he's cool
There.
Yeah, he was there. I'm just imagining the crucifixion there. Richard's just there.
Yeah.
He's just kind of just hanging out. It's not looking good here, Jesus.
I guess that's who the apostles were. Maybe Richard is the apostles.
Richard is Judas?
I mean, he has to actually.
I keep putting this into your head, and
you keep wanting me to think that he's going to betray him. I mean, the funny thing is, I almost made this comparison to the Peter and Paul thing. The Paul, Paul being the. But never mind. I'm connecting too many things that aren't connected.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I guess the one question I have for you here is, we've been talking about duality so much, right? And here at the end of the book, we've kind of been told that is too shallow of thinking, right? That things are a lot more complicated than just two sides, than just two different, than just the idea of twinners. The idea of duality seems too small for the way the world is. And I guess what is it that you take away from that as the book kind of eliminates that idea as we move into the final chapters?
I don't know. I don't know, man. What do you think? Like,
well, could it be said that part of coming of age is learning that there are no two sides to everything, right? That that the world is more complicated than good and bad, and this idea of there are only two realities. There's only two sides to things. And learning that it's a bit more than that, and there are no all people have facets of them, right? But those facets make up the one singular thing that is you, right?
Yeah, I like that. Sure. I'll have to think about that. Because definitely the major overriding theme has been one of duality. So it's interesting to say, well, in the end, we're kind of almost deconstructing the idea of duality. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, the object of their desire here is a thing that is by its very nature singular. It has the talisman has no duality. It has no anything beyond. It's the center of everything. It is in itself unique and one. So it has to kind of be a deconstruction of duality in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. I like that.
So as the chapter ends, Matt, we have Jack finally getting to the ocean. And I love this moment so much. Near the middle of December, in the year 1981, a boy named Jack Sawyer stood where the water and the land came together, hands in the pockets of his jeans, looking out at the steady Pacific. He was 12 years old and extraordinarily beautiful for his age. His brown hair was long, probably too long, but the sea breeze swept it back from a fine, clear brow. He stood thinking of his mother, who was dying, and of friends, both absent and present, and worlds within worlds, turning their courses. I've come the distance, he thought, and shivered, coast to coast with traveling Jack Sawyer. His eyes abruptly filled with tears. He breathed deeply of the salt. Here he was, and the talisman was close by. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this because it's been so long, but this is basically a rewriting of the way the book opens.
I mean, I knew it sounded familiar, and it's definitely a moment where we're pausing, pausing to reflect before we move on into the finale. Yeah,
and the text does a really interesting thing here where it italicizes all of this. I know that you lost that in the audiobook, but basically everything I read there was italicized, and generally when King and Straub italicize text, it is because it is the thought of a character. Although that does not seem to be the thought of a character here, right?
Yeah, I think it's basically, as you say, it's emphasizing it so that you'll notice it as being symmetric with the beginning.
And just to remind everyone, the opening of the book is on September 15th, 1981, a boy named Jack Sawyer stood where the water and land came together, hands in the pockets of his jeans, looking out at the steady Atlantic. He was 12 years old and tall for his age. The sea breeze swept back his brown hair, probably too long from a fine, clear brow. He stood there filled with the confused and painful emotions he had lived with for the last 3 months. So it is very similar, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because his the last 3 months, the distance between September and December is 3 months too. So so it's a 3 month journey mirroring his 3 months of frustration and sadness.
I love that. And then as we conclude the chapter, we see that in Point Venuti, a film festival is going on, or was going on once upon a time. And what's it featuring? Who is it featuring, Matt? Of course, it's Lily Kavanaugh, Queen of the Bees.
How fitting.
I love that just bam moment at the end there.
Yeah.
So finally, we get on to our next chapter, chapter 38, titled The End of the Road. And this chapter begins, Matt, by reminding us that Richard is in a real bad shape physically, on top of all the mental strain he's going with. And I think this is important because this ends up kind of being the thing that drives these next few chapters, right? Richard's declining health and what's happening here. And we're kind of told, I guess I wanted to talk to you about this now, because we're kind of told that perhaps Morgan Sloat has something to do with what's happening to Richard here, but we don't really understand how that would work, right?
Yeah, I mean, I admit I was waiting for a more direct explanation of Richard's illness, but
sure.
I mean, I think I'm going to take it on the more metaphysical level of like, it's a spiritual injury that his father has done by being such a piece of shit. That's the problem.
That's what happens. You got a bad dad and you get sick.
Yep. You get sick. Yep.
I think you're right here. And Jack kind of offers a version of what you just said there, where it says a slice of Richard's childhood had been burned out of him, turned inside out. The railway and the dead station, with its staring glassless windows, must have seemed like dreadful parodies of themselves to Richard. Yet more bits of the past destroyed in the wake of everything he was learning to admit about his father. Richard's entire life, as much as Jack's, had begun to fold into the pattern of the territories, and Richard had been given much less preparation for this transformation.
Yeah,
which is kind to Richard. In that, I think it is. I think this is a sign that he's maybe growing to understand Richard's plight a little bit more.
Yeah, I think as we go on, Jack, he is just as firm, but I think he is more forgiving and sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. And at this point in our journey, our adventurers come across their first territories tree, aka monstrous alive trees of doom that are just awful.
Uh-huh.
I love the writing of this thing, though. Just the way this tree is described. It grew on the inland side of the highway. Its tangle of dark branches and column of thick, irregular bark emerged from a reddish, waxy tangle of poison ivy. Knotholes in the bark gaped, mouths or eyes at the boys. Down in the thick mat of poison ivy, a rustling of unsatisfied roots agitated the waxy leaves above them as if a breeze blew through them. Jack said, "Let's cross the road," and hoped that Richard had not seen the tree. Behind him, he could still hear the thick, rubbery roots prowling through the stems of the ivy. Is that a boy? Could that be a boy up there? A special boy, perhaps?
Love it.
We've mentioned Lovecraft a few times so far reading this book, right? I think the rest of this week's reading really fully takes us into Lovecraft country, right? With the monstrous trees and everything that's weird going on in Point Venuti. I think it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's great. The whole world, like, definitely does seem to be contorting it into a hell dimension. I think a fun thing about what's happening with the something to pull out about this is like it's after him because he's a boy, you could say, or it's
Yeah.
emphasizing the idea that he's a boy. Rather, yeah. So it's like the whole book has been about the way in which the world like chews up and spits out boys specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole journey began with a boy crushed by a cart of beer, and here we have, and we've had all of these men trying to entrap and exploit Jack throughout the whole story over and over and over. And I don't know. I guess it's just like here at the end of the journey, the tree wants a boy, specifically a boy. It is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on there for sure. I think especially considering that in a kind of a throwaway line, as Jack is walking by these trees, he sees the skeleton of a 9-year-old in kind of rested amongst one of these trees. So this general idea that these trees at the end of his journey are symbolic of all of the, for lack of a better phrase, boy abuse that has been occurring throughout the story so far.
Yeah, these are standing in for the other forms of predators that he's encountered for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Regardless of all that, one of the things it definitely symbolizes is the differences between these two worlds. This duality, this is starting to collapse, right? That now suddenly we are on Earth, we are in our world, and territory trees are here. That the differences between the territories and the our world tories are growing thinner and thinner.
Yeah.
Thinner. Thinny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this town is another thinny.
Sure.
As you get closer to the Talisman. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, we move on to our next chapter. Chapter 38 was a pretty short one. So we move on to chapter 39, Point Venuti. By the way, this word, Venuti, is Italian for come. Not like the George Lucas's space jazz band, but literally like come here, right? I think this is pretty fitting for a chapter in which, from now on throughout this chapter and the next, basically the talisman is going to be in Jack's head, kind of screaming at him and singing at him, calling him to it, come. And it gets more frantic and more desperate as he comes. So I think it's very fitting that this is the name of this town.
Yeah, that's interesting. And which I looked up Point Venuti to see if I could find it on a map, and I couldn't. So either it's not real or it isn't real anymore. And maybe it is a ghost town. Maybe it did used to be a town.
Yeah.
I was kind of expecting to find that it was like the far western point of the continental of the contiguous U.S. or something, but no, it is not.
No, I love Point Venuti though, Matt. I love how fucking weird it is. This deserted beachside town that's falling apart, and fire has taken over a big portion of it, and there's this giant looming evil hotel infecting it. I love it so much. What the way Jack describes it here is the vibes or the atmosphere or whatever the ding dong you want to call it are all screwed up because everything's evil and good, black and white, all mixed up. And I think what we have to do here as we kind of continue to explore Point Venuti is do what we've been doing with everything else in this story so far, is comparing it to its counterpart, right? Because we started in Arcadia Beach on the Atlantic Ocean. Here we are at the end of our quest on Point Venuti on the Pacific Ocean. And how are these two towns similar and how are they different? I think it's really interesting because I do think Arcadia Beach also had this abandoned, droll, depressed feeling to it, right? It was as equally deserted as Point Venuti is, but I do think its existence is much more mundanely droll and depressing, right? It is not the kind of monstrous desertion that Point Venuti is.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, yeah, like we talked a lot about how Arcadia was like overwhelmingly blank and bland and empty.
Yeah, yeah,
I think maybe there was a kind of supernatural tinge to everything, but it was like a banal evil, and
sure.
and it was like a ineffectual good, rather than here we have like caricatured and extreme versions of those
Yeah.
things.
I think it's worth pointing out here something I don't think we talked about back in Arcadia Beach, but the word Arcadia literally means idyllically innocent, simple, or untroubled. So I think that's pretty fitting, actually. It's not entirely true because Arcadia Beach was not that for Jack at the time, but I think Arcadia Beach represented that for Lily, and that's why she wanted to go there.
You could also say, that was an attempt to run away from the truth, and
Sure.
like a kind of refuge in ignorance. So it's like it's a I don't know, like a lotus eater kind of
Sure.
of refuge, where it's a false refuge. It's not actually solving your problem, but at least you are not
Yeah.
having to fight for your life against demon trees.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I like the image of the like that Jack has to leave Arcadia Beach. He has to escape from this innocent, simple existence. He needs life is complicated, and he needs to encounter that complication head on. He
Yeah.
needs to come to it. Point
Yes.
Venuti.
Yes.
Yes. All right, but let's talk about the naked lady. A naked woman so starved Jack could have counted her ribs, twisted slowly and ceremoniously as a weather vane in the littered street before the shops. Above her pale body with its drooping breasts and mop of pubic hair, her face had been painted blazing orange. Orange, too, was her hair. Jack stopped moving and watched the insane woman with the painted face and dyed hair raise her arms, twist her upper body as deliberately as one doing a Tai Chi movement, kick her left foot out over the fly-blown corpse of a dog, and freeze into position like a statue. An emblem of all Point Venuti, the madwoman held her posture. Slowly the foot came down, and the skinny body revolved.
Okay.
So, what was your reaction to the orange naked woman, Matt?
It's just like a great piece of I mean, it reminded me of the weird surreal stuff that we saw in the the Wasteland previously. And it's and I was like, even as we saw it, I was like, is she gonna like rush them? Is this gonna be a thing? And I was like, no, probably not. This is probably just to show you how weird and like detached from all surrounding things this area is.
Yeah, I agree. It's so weird and off-putting, and I love the choice to describe her as a weather vane, because it's actually like multiple times throughout this chapter we have Jack looking up and seeing the weather vanes on top of the Black Hotel, and so the choice here to also describe this woman's movements as a weather vane, I think, are deliberate to me. We're comparing her, we're linking her to this ominous evil presence that rules this whole town.
Yeah, I like that.
So speaking of that Black Hotel, Matt, we get our first good look at it, and I love this writing so much. I really, really do. I think that the first fun thing is Richard thinks that the hotel has grown since he last saw it, and this is one of those instances where he might be just literally correct in that the hotel is just bigger now because it's alive and evil, and so it's literally just gotten bigger. I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
And then we have this. I think Stephen King wrote this paragraph. This is my guess. I'll read it and then you tell me what you think. The architectural extravagance of the Black Hotel, all the turrets and brass weather vanes attached to fluted towers, the cupolas and gambrels, which should have made it a playful fantasy, instead made it menacing, nightmarish. It looked as though it belonged to some kind of anti-Disneyland, where Donald Duck had strangled Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Mickey shot Minnie Mouse full of heroin. So it's that last sentence that makes me think Stephen King wrote this, because he does this beautiful description of this haunting evil presence and says, and the simile he brings up to compare this is Donald Duck shooting his nephews and Mickey getting Minnie addicted to heroin.
That's great. I mean, it's either King or it's Straub doing a really good job mimicking
Sure.
King.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great description. I know it. It's not literally the Dark Tower, but I feel like some of the magic of the tower is leaking through into this plane to give it this fantastic appearance.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
just
you're
love
right.
the description so much.
So to move on closer to the Black Hotel, the boys have to cross through some territories trees, which attack them, resulting in one of the most horrifying moments in the story so far, Matt. This is like just so fucking creepy. I love how the trees basically uproot themselves and then just like fling themselves at the boys trying to stop them. Like it's just like they're doing everything they can to stop them from getting any further.
Yeah, it's extremely. Everything from here on is like action scene, basically.
Yeah. The thing I really like about this, though, is this is one of the first problems in the book that I don't think can be easily solved by flipping worlds, right? The last time trees attacked Jack, how did he get out of there? He just flipped back to Earth. He just flipped back to our world. He's in our world already, and here are the same kind of trees that are attacking him again. And so I think what this is demonstrating, to me at least, is there's no escaping by flipping anymore, right? There's no way to get out of your problems by migrating over anymore. These two worlds have combined, and you can't get through your problems by doing that anymore. And so it's introducing a new kind of tension to the story that I really like.
Yeah, that's a good point. We get this sense from this point on that the only way out is forward and through. There's no more escaping. We've said this story thus far has been a series of entrapments and escapes, and now it's like, well, the only escape from this is to actually just finish the quest. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think that's echoed in the next chapter where he asked Speedy how he can help him, and Speedy's like, get the talisman.
Yeah,
that's how you can help me. Go get the thing.
Yeah,
at this point, that's all that can be done anymore.
Right, exactly.
So they managed to make it through the trees, and once again, Richard not doing well at all. He's now nearly blind from the area around his eyes swelling up so much, and he's just mentally racked with guilt over what we talked about a couple chapters ago, over not believing Jack and not trusting Jack with the information he had. It's just awful. It's just so awful.
Yeah. It's so Jack has sort of done his character arc almost, you could say, and Richard is sort of speedrunning his.
Yeah, yes, you could say that. Yeah. They finally make it to the hotel, and as they kind of crest the hill, they see that the front of the hotel is absolutely packed with a bunch of wolves. that there's limousines everywhere and a whole army waiting for them, including our old friend Osmond leading the charge himself. He's got a bullhorn, and he's ordering his people around. And the question we leave this chapter with is, how the hell are our characters going to get out of this one? How are they going to get by this giant army?
And I don't know.
Well, I mean, you do, because they're about to do it.
But I didn't.
Did you stop reading
before, though? I didn't know.
So we move on to chapter 40, Speedy on the beach, which, I mean, it's fun because like it's not for another 4 pages into the book that we actually meet Speedy, but you turn the page and you see a chapter title called Speedy on the Beach, and you're like, hey, it's Speedy, and you get excited, right? And I think that's part of what they're intentionally doing, is building your excitement to bring the mentor character back into things, and then we kind of upend that, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Jack and Richard army crawl down the hill away from the front of the hotel and towards its back, towards the beach. All the while, we have to mention, I'm just going to say this up front, but the entire time the Talisman is like screaming at Jack, like, hurry up, get here, get me, come on, you can do it, come now. It's probably get annoying if you ask me.
Yeah. That's yeah. Go ahead.
So the next part here, though, is I think Richard is reasoning that his father is probably here in some ways, and I think probably over at the old Kingsland motel where they stayed when they visited Point Venuti, because of course they did not stay in the Black Hotel because they couldn't go in. We get this line here. Well, don't worry about him. Richard's voice was paper thin. I mean, don't worry about me worrying about him. I think he's dead, Jack. And unfortunately, what happens in this moment is Jack hears the voice of Speedy, and so he's not able to actually inspect the meaning of the statement. Like he starts to think like, what do you mean by and then Speedy interjects, and we kind of toss this aside. But the question I have for you, Matt, is what why is Richard saying this?
Yeah, I mean, I want to linger on that statement. Yeah, so I think the idea here is that Morgan Sloat, as we have known him, is not the same man who was originally Richard's father, maybe. Like,
sure,
touching upon his overwhelmingly evil twinner, he became corrupted and he ceased to be himself, and thus has been dead for years. There's of course the more literal way to take this, that like he died off screen, right? But I'm like, no, I don't think so. I sincerely doubt that.
Sure.
So I think it has to be a kind of metaphysical death that Richard means here.
Yeah, I like this because I think this kind of tracks with our current not proven but maybe possible theory about, the deconstruction of duality, right? That we had Morgan of Orris and Morgan Sloat, and they were two distinct individual people. And I think part of this is how Morgan Sloat handled the terrible acts that he was done, is by forcing his twinner to actually do them, right? And so you can like give yourself plausible deniability and say that it wasn't me doing these things, it was this bad man doing these things. And as everything is kind of broken down, as the lines between the territories and our world have broken down, as the lines between Jason and Jack have broken down, perhaps the lines between Morgan of Orris and Morgan Sloat have broken down too. And there's no real way of calling those distinct individual identities anymore.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to poke at this idea of like Morgan Sloat thinks that he got the advantages by being able to dip into not Osmond, to Morgan of Orris's life, but in reality he gave up everything that was good about himself, and it doesn't even realize it, and he is no longer the man who he used to be, something like that.
Sure, yeah, I like that. So Jack is so happy here to see Speedy, and like I said, I think because of what the chapter has done, so are we. It's the old mentor, the guy who guided you on this quest and who will surely solve all your problems, and then we get a look at him. For Speedy, Parker looked worse than Richard, much worse. His cracked, leaking face gave Jack a weary nod, and the boy thought Speedy was confirming his hopelessness. Speedy wore only a pair of old brown shorts, and all of his skin seemed horribly diseased, as if with leprosy. So, I love this idea, right? Of the mentor serves a very important role in stories like this. This is the guiding hand, the person that sets you on your path, and the thing you kind of want to fall back on when all is lost. And part of these stories is always removing that mentor, either physically, through their death, or kind of handicapping them in some way. And so Speedy's here, and we're like, yes, he's going to solve all my problems. And it's like, no, he's not physically capable of doing that anymore, man. He's dying. He's literally dying.
Yeah, he doesn't have whatever the secret sauce is that Jack has. And I think we kind of know that he is not a single-natured being. He has a twinner.
We definitely
very much know this. So,
and I love when Speedy says, "You the one, all right. The road laid its mark on you. I see. You the one. You gonna do it."
Yeah.
And this is, I think what we talked about before. I think this is the definitive moment of what we talked about before, that once again confirms this idea that it's the journey that mattered, not the destination, right? That obviously we were told from the beginning, no, you can't just hop a plane and fly to the West Coast and then show up at Point Venuti and get the talisman. That the point of the journey is hardening yourself, is strengthening yourself, is molding yourself into the type of person that can walk into that hotel and pick up this thing and save everything,
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's I think any person who isn't Jack, who hasn't suffered on the metaphorical cross as Jack has,
Mm-hmm.
they would be in the same shape as, you know, Speedy or Richard if they tried to approach the tower like this. And you know, it's the metaphysical mark
Oh, that's
of his
interesting.
journey. That's
Yeah. I like that. I don't think I've ever thought about it that way, that the sickness that they're feeling, Jack is immune to it specifically because of the road of trials he's gone on.
because, I mean,
That perhaps they're trying to give him the same sickness, or
yeah,
whatever this thing is trying to be worked on him, but cannot be.
the reason I go there is because Richard also has the same metaphysical quality of being, you know, single natured, and yet he's suffering pretty badly. Not as bad as Speedy appears to be, but he's suffering pretty badly. So
Yeah.
so why, you know, Jack not suffering? It's like, well, he has the mark. He has the mark of the road, you could say. I mean, I love that phrasing, that the road put its mark on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like yeah, he has the protection of the land that he has crossed. He has earned some sort of, you know, boon from having conquered the road of trials.
Yeah, I like that.
So I the text doesn't say it right out, but I like that interpretation. So.
No, I like that a lot.
Cool.
I think you're onto something there. So Speedy does have one final token to give Jack, Matt, and it's an inflatable legless horse raft of Silver Lady, the carousel horse that Jack helped Speedy repair all those pages and chapters ago. What was your reaction to this?
I mean, it's a perfect like symmetry of the story, but it's just also such a wonderful, goofy Stephen King touch. Makes me even more sure that this is a Stephen King section.
Yeah. So they blow up the raft and are able to they're told that they can take the raft out under the hotel, where a part of the hotel kind of extends out over the ocean, and there is a ladder there with a trap door that will, you know, have them sneak into the hotel and thusly get around the Wolf Army and Osmond and Sunlight Gardner. As they make it out there, Osmond notices them and calls out to his wolves to rush and stop them. But fortunately, Matt, fortunately for Jack, he's got some friends. He's got some help. We see here that there is a zoo of monstrous creatures waiting just under the wave, creatures that are helping Jack by intercepting bullets being fired at him, and possibly doing some more stuff. We don't see what they're doing to the Wolf Army and Osmond on the shore, but we're kind of given this tantalizing thing of Jack couldn't see what was going on the beach, right?
Yeah.
And the way these things are described is just like more Lovecraftian stuff, you know, just this horrible, horrifying giant creatures that are just everywhere, just right under the surface of the water.
Horrifying, but not necessarily in the like Todash, like, oh, these are definitely all evil. They seem just like fantastical in ways that are just bizarre. To me anyway.
Yeah, I love the writing here. Whatever force had sealed the Talisman in the Black Hotel had set these creatures in the waters off Point Venuti to make sure the wrong people kept away, and Speedy had known it. The great bodies of the creatures in the water delicately nudged the raft and nearer the pilings, but the waves they made kept Jack from getting all but the most fragmentary view of what was happening on shore. Basically, don't worry about that stuff. We're just going to guide you. We got you. We got you.
I just love those descriptions of the monsters so much. They're so good.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I also love the descriptions of the weird slug-like creatures that are all over the hotel's pilings that have teeth and are terrifying. Richard, go nudge us off that piling. Oh my God, poor Richard.
Richard. Yeah, like I said, you know, you gotta expose him to a lot of trials really quick to make up for all those trials that he missed.
Yeah, definitely. I love this. Is Richard is on his last leg, right? He's barely conscious. He's awful, and I love him in this moment, Matt, because he's not being, you know, the scared, irrationally rational kid from before. Like, I love this moment here. And I don't care how many slugs we have to kill to get up the ladder. You are going up the ladder, Richard. That's all. That's it. Shit on you, Richard said. You don't have to talk to me like that. I'm sick of you being so high and mighty. I know I'm going up the ladder, wherever it is. I probably have a fever of 105, but I know I'm going up the ladder. I just don't know if I can take it. So to hell with you. Richard had uttered this entire speech with his eyes shut. He effortlessly forced both eyes open again. Nuts. I need you, Jack said. Nuts. I'll get up the ladder, you asshole. I just love it. Like his indignant, once again, I think this is right that he's just riding Ka, but he's like exhausted and
Yeah.
sick and dying. And he's just like, don't talk to me as if like I'm doing this. I'm not doing this because I'm scared or because I'm refusing to accept it or believe it. Like I'm not doing it because I'm literally dying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have physically have the capability of doing it. I
Right.
know I'm going to do it, but I just like, it's such a powerful statement from Richard here.
Yeah. It's like, hey, this sucks, and I'm actually just mad.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, shut up. I'll get up the ladder. Just
I'm going to go up. I literally don't know if I'm going to pass out as I'm going up the ladder.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's give this guy his respect, right? Because I mean, like he does get up the ladder, right? They find the ladder. Jack edges Richard on, and Richard, barely conscious, finds the strength to climb up the ladder. He almost passes out and falls off. And I think at the very end, as they get up to the trapdoor, he does pass out from exhaustion. But every time Jack needs him to, he reaches down and finds a little bit of extra strength to put another step on another rung of that ladder. And he needs respect, man. It's very easy to just toss this character out as the annoying, rude kid we saw way back when Jack first encountered him at the Thayer school. But nah, man, back again to the steel. He's got this strength underneath him.
He does. He does have the strength. He does have the steel. We love Richard. We've come to love Richard.
Yeah. He's great. He's a great character. One of those really unexpected characters. And again, I think I don't think I've ever appreciated him as much as I have done on this reading. Like I think, everyone loves Jack, and then of course everyone loves Wolf because Wolf is the best. But I don't think anyone really loves Richard as a character. And maybe our opinions of him will change as the book is wrapping up. But maybe not. And so I've really enjoyed Richard so far.
Yeah. We'll see.
All right, Matt. So as we conclude this week's reading, I just have to ask you the annoying question that I know you hate, but I'm going to do it anyway. Our characters are about to step foot inside the Black Hotel. The final leg of the quest is before us. We know the talisman is here. It's right here. All he has to do is just walk up and get it, right? We have 2 more weeks of chapters. We're almost done with the book, about 120 pages to go. And I got to ask you, what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen?
So, we got 2 characters here.
Mm-hmm.
There's you got to do something with that, right? Like I keep thinking about, I keep thinking about, Gollum and Frodo and Sam. The Frodo Sam connection was already made. In the end, Frodo can't destroy the ring on his own. He needs Gollum to jump in, trying to be a little asshole, and then because evil destroys itself, that's how the ring is destroyed. So I'm like, there's got to be something where it's like, well, the talisman is not just going to be sitting there on a pedestal to be grasped. It needs there's some challenge, there's some trial, there's some sacrifice, there's some trade. Maybe Richard's the one who has to make the trade. Maybe Jack. Maybe this is like all about Richard. Maybe that's like the great irony of the story is like Richard's actually the one who has to take the talisman, and Jack is, and it'll save Jack's mom, but Richard's the one who has to like heal himself or something, or be the maybe Richard is the Christ figure of the story all along. Who knows? Like that would be. That would be a fun twist, right? So,
yeah.
But like, it has to be something. I know I just like fumbled out a whole bunch of stuff there, but like, there's no reason to even have Richard here unless we're going to do something that relies on, okay, you brought 2 characters into the final, Roland went into the tower alone. Here we have 2 characters. Okay, what are we going to do with that? And I don't know exactly.
No, I like that. I think that's a fair assumption. I mean, he just literally like manhandled this guy up a ladder, so why would he need him here? It seems like that's going to matter. So yeah, fair guess.
Yeah, cool.
perhaps we will find out next week when we read the next 4 chapters. We're going to be reading chapters 41 through 44. And you are correct, Matt. There is an interlude immediately after this chapter. So it'll be that interlude and then those 4 chapters.
All right.
All right, that is going to do it for that section. Now we have to get on to our discussion question from last week, Matt. We asked the listeners what is their favorite train in storytelling, and we got a whole lot of responses here, Matt. We're currently on page 12 of our script, and it goes to page 20. So the rest of that is y'all talking about trains. Turns out you really like trains, which is fair, because who doesn't like trains?
And as usual, we're going to say right now that we're going to read through them really quickly, and then we're going to not do that. We're going to dwell on them at length. All right, Pear Jane says, the train from Miyazaki's Spirited Away is wonderfully haunting. A commuter car that runs on tracks just below the surface of an ocean is both beautiful and profoundly eerie. The music is dreamy and soft. The animation is gentle and lulling. Like all the best trains, it serves as both transition and destination. It connects vital actions in the film, but it's an experience in and of itself. Ghosts get on and off the train at isolated platforms in the sea. Where are they all going? And until only No Face and Chihiro are left alone to finish her journey. The scene is so profound that it's made it into my subconscious. Every so often, I dream about being on a train skimming lightly across the surface of a vast sea. I honestly don't remember that, even though I thought I'd seen that movie. So maybe I haven't seen that movie.
Yeah, it's Miyazaki is my anime exception clause, right?
Yeah,
where I unapologetically love everything he's done, and
it's not anime.
Yeah, this movie included. It's great. There's a person I'm working with during my day job is named Chihiro, and I read this question like while I was on a phone call with them, and it really threw me off.
That is interesting.
Next, we have Baby Can You Dig Your Sam, who says, Blaine is Jermaine, and that is the truth. But that we all know that was a disallowed answer. So beyond Blaine, Sam says, I've got to mention both Strangers on a Train and Throw Mama from a Train. Hitchcock's original was amazing, and I just love Throw Mama. It gets funnier with each subsequent viewing. There are just too many hilarious moments if I want to keep this short. The best is when Mama comes up with the perfect opening line for Larry's novel that he's been looking for during the whole movie. The night was sultry. If made today, I fear this movie would take would be far darker than it was in the late 80s. Owen's inherent sweetness and the perfect balance to Larry's anger, in my opinion, a very overlooked comedy. I think Sam's right, because it's so overlooked that I've never seen it. I've never seen that movie.
Yeah, me neither. So good job making us seem like a couple of idiots again.
Yeah, thanks. I have seen Strangers on a Train, though, which is indeed very good.
All right, Unshaved Testicle says, I have to go with the trains from Stand By Me. Yes, the trestle scene and Teddy's trains dodge scene were impressive, but this is more of one of those trains hitting and killing Ray Brower in that movie. Ray Brower's lifeless, bloody face scarred me more than any other thing in my childhood. My brother and I had an unused bedroom turned playroom upstairs that was pretty much a seldom used storage space for our toys. I remember going upstairs every night to go to the bathroom and seeing the playroom's open window, no curtains and no blinds, just the black of night. And every time I imagined Ray Brower's dumb, dead face in the window, just watching me as I raced to the bathroom.
Jesus.
Now, of course, I can watch the movie without covering my eyes, and in hindsight, I'm happy I did have such an irrational fear of the body, and I owe that to those trains in that story. That's a fun way of connecting the trains with horrible, traumatic.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. Emperor Fry the Solid says, did you specify fictional trains? Because the Amtrak from Vancouver, British Columbia to Portland, Oregon is an absolute dreamy ride right along the Sound or through misty woods, seeing the approach of twinkling cities over dark water. Something we did on a school trip when I was a kid that tied right into the fantasy worlds where I spent most of my time.
That's cool. I became aware of this YouTube channel recently, which is just a guy who takes trains. Yeah, like cross country trains either in Europe or Japan or the US, and I was like, wow, this is quite a cool thing. So I don't know if we specified fictional trains, but in any case, I like your answer. I would like to go on a long train ride sometime, like a sleeper car type situation.
Yeah, my wife and I went to Scandinavia for our honeymoon, And one of the things we did while we were there is took the train from Oslo, Norway to Bergen. And it's this very famous train ride that like goes through the heart of the wilderness of Norway. And it was incredibly beautiful. It was the summer, and yet there was still a lot of snow everywhere. My understanding is the best time to take this train ride is actually in the middle of the winter when it's dark and it's like you can see like the aurora borealis and like snow every. It's supposed to be. It was beautiful in the summer, and it's just it was an incredible train ride. So
Cool.
it's great. And yeah, we didn't specify. I think we did specify fictional trains, but you know what, man? There's no rules here.
There's no rules.
No one has any rules.
Yeah. All right. Drunk Phoenix 26 says, if I can't pick Blaine, I'll go with the Hogwarts Express. From how to get to platform 9 3/4 to the mischief that happens on the train, to the beginnings of new friendships, to its final destination, seeing the journey through Harry's eyes does a great job of immersing us into this new world he's discovering and eases us into my second favorite world, just behind the Dark Tower one. It doesn't hurt that Universal made an awesome ride/experience for this in Florida as well. Where are my Stephen King amusement park rides?
Those would be terrifying.
I'm imagining the Blaine amusement park ride.
Oh my god. Have you ever been to Universal Orlando?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Did you do the Harry Potter stuff?
No, it did not exist yet.
I'm not like a huge Harry Potter person, but I thought it was still pretty fun. The Hogwarts Express ride is actually pretty great.
That's cool.
They have like you each get in your own train car, and the train actually moves from one part of the park to the other, but they have like video monitors over the windows that make it look like you're seeing outside the train and experiencing stuff. And because the train goes from point A to point B and it's not a circle, like you can take it from either direction, and you can either go back to platform 9 3/4 or you can go back to Hogwarts. It's pretty cool. They definitely kicked ass with this whole Wizarding World stuff at Universal.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for all those sorts of things. So
yeah,
that'd be cool.
Other Worlds 1999 says, as much as Blaine is a pain, Charlie the Choo Choo was way more disturbing. But for a favorite train, I'll say the Hogwarts Express and the time traveling train from Back to the Future 3. Yeah, it flew, man. What a cool train.
That was like the greatest final image to a trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, the train takes off and you're just like,
that was so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of cool train stuff in that movie. Like even the train, like the original train that he uses to get back to the future.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, for some reason, the kid version of me was really obsessed with the idea of those multicolored logs that like drive the fires to Uber level. Like, I thought that was just really cool that like, now we're going to throw in the purple one and it's going to make us go even faster. Like, I don't know. Not my favorite Back to the Future movie, but that part was really great.
Yeah. It was a fun idea. It was, yeah. All right. Next, Felidao. I find the recurring train motif in the Christopher Nolan film Inception to be rather haunting. There is a refrain that occurs several times throughout the movie, and it's always associated with waking or death. You're waiting for a train that will take you far away. You know where you hope the train will take you, but you can't know for sure. Yet it doesn't matter, because we'll be together. When Cobb and his wife Mal get lost for decades in the dream world limbo, Mal forgets that she's dreaming, and Cobb is forced to perform an inception on her and plant the idea in her subconscious that the world isn't real and that she has to die to wake up. Cobb and Mal perform suicide together in the dream by laying down in front of the oncoming train. Tragically, the idea remains even after she awakes, and then she repeats, and then the plot of the movie happens basically. So the train then comes to symbolize and become inextricably linked with Cobb's guilt over the death of his wife, and the train image of them with their heads laying on the track is one that recurs throughout the movie, and it's great.
Yeah, dead wives. Christopher Nolan loves dead wives.
It's the only way to make you feel anything is to kill a wife.
Inception is a good movie. I give Chris Nolan a lot of grief at times. He's definitely not my favorite director, and a lot of the stuff he does sometimes drives me fucking crazy, but Inception's a good movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Co Donahoe 89 says, I would have to say the Orient Express. Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. You always know the murderer is aboard, which helps keep the tension high. Yeah, it's a really fun idea because you're locked in one place and the murderer's there, and it's a confined, cramped space because you're on a train, and then I don't want to spoil who the murderer of the Murder on the Orient Express is, but it's shocking.
Oh man, you know what's funny is I thought that this question would probably not get very many answers, and we have like 25 answers left.
We have so many answers. We have so many answers. This is a good one though. I just watched. They made a Murder on the Orient Express with Kenneth Branagh. Speaking of Kenneth Branagh, we talked about him earlier as Poirot, and I actually enjoyed that one. My wife and I just watched Death on the Nile, the newest one that just came out a month or so ago, and it's awful. It's really bad.
Oh no.
It made me so sad. I mean, it's one of those movies where you're like, it's 2022 and yet no one knows how to do special effects.
Yeah.
Like, I have never been less convinced that someone was actually in Egypt in my life watching this movie. Like, there's a scene where Poirot is like standing next to the Great Pyramids of Giza, and it's like he's on a set. He's like so clearly on a set. It's terrible. It's like, and I wish I could say, oh, this is a stylistic choice for the atmosphere of the movie. No, it's not. It's not.
It's just laziness.
Although Matt, I will say, did you ever want to know the origin story of Poirot's mustache?
No.
Because you get that in this movie.
So cool, man. So glad. I'll definitely watch that. All right, next we have Complicated 9519 says, my favorite would be the sea train in One Piece. It's just a normal train that connects surrounding islands with it. In a world where sea travel is the main mode of transportation, the train riding on tracks just below the surface of the ocean is pretty cool. Oh, another anime with tracks just below the surface of the ocean. Interesting.
Is a train underwater, or just like the train only partially underwater?
I don't know. No idea.
Well, let's see. I mean, it's too bad we won't have to talk about this this anime anymore.
Yeah, ever. Yeah.
Next up, Sheev Miller Band says, you fools, you utter buffoons, can't you say that you played right into our hands by outlawing Blaine? After him, it's Tom's Sea Train from One Piece. Condemned for having built the ship the Pirate King used to conquer the seas, shipwright Tom makes a deal with the world government to build a set of train tracks on the water between his island of Water 7 and the judicial island Ernie's Lobby in order to atone for his crime. Long story short, battleship shenanigans ensue, and Tom is condemned for those instead, and it's very sad. One of his apprentices stands on the tracks to try to stop the train with his own body while fucking anime. Frankly, I love the Sea Train because it's a goofy and stupid concept that plays well into an excellent and emotional backstory. Plus, there's a tense chase in the present day of the story involving it, which is pretty nice too. Also, I wanted to point out that I read the question ahead of time, but as soon as I saw it, I knew there'd be a no Blaine stipulation. Checkmate.
Yeah, you got us, Sheev. You got us. As always. I think One Piece just contains literally every story element in existence inside of it.
I guess when something goes on for 800,000 episodes, it has to contain everything, basically.
I think you're right. All right, next, Shortstop 88 says, my favorite train in storytelling is the Puffing Tom, which is a train built on a rail system just below the waves of the ocean. It was built by a man known as Tom, who made it to save his hometown / island, which was continually losing money as it was the location of an annual hurricane. This new sea train allowed for the island to become a central trading hub for many islands around it due to its rail system. Unfortunately, after he saves the town, the world government had him executed for having also been the pirate ship of the last Pirate King. This was from One Piece? Sorry.
What?
I don't know if that was a good line read there.
I love that Shortstop tried to trick us by not saying it was an anime until the very end, but little did they know 17 other people were going to also pick the anime One Piece. So you've been foiled, Shortstop. I'm sorry.
So, this Tom train might get me to finally watch One Piece.
No, it won't. Don't lie. You're not going to watch One Piece.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I'd lose all respect for you.
I know.
The Graken dude says, gonna go ahead and throw out a shout out to my man at Charlie the Choo Choo. While maybe only being a story within a story, Charlie's creepy ass went through it. Yet despite the rise, fall, and rise of it, we're still creeped out by the whole experience. It's like loving a Furby, though. Someone has to. I guess I will say that Charlie the Choo Choo is technically not against our no Blaine rules, so
Yeah.
congratulations.
Yeah. And he indeed is. I did get that book, by the way. I read it to my kids at least once, and I don't know what to make of it. And
Do they have nightmares?
No, they're just kind of like, that was weird.
They don't understand the context.
No.
Now you have to read them the entirety of the Dark Tower.
Now I have to read them the entirety of the Dark Tower, yeah. Okay.
Maybe skip the terrible demon rape part.
Yeah, we'll skip a bunch of stuff. All right. The Walking Hard case says, in an effort to help you guys keep with the runtime below 2 hours, as much as I'm opposed to the idea, let's keep this short and sweet. Thomas and Snowpiercer. 2 very similar trains.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Financial Profit 584 says Thomas the Train, the Polar Express because hot chocolate, the train, and Snowpiercer Snowpiercer has that hand scene is the hand scene is great. I gotcha. The hand scene. I was having trouble reading this for some reason. And the story train and Rick and Morty as the episode was just wild. Didn't love it, but it was wild. I love these short and sweet answers. Y'all are killing it.
Yeah, thank you. Knocking it out of the park. All right. Hobo Demon says, favorite train and recent memories from Demon Slayer Mugen train arc. Demon Slayer is an anime about folks in Taisho era Japan. So, like around World War One, give or take 5 years. God.
I love you, Hobo Demon. I do. But holy shit, look at all this stuff.
Yeah, various stylized sword fighting systems to fight demons with non-diegetic, flashy elemental after effects, leitmotifing the personality and philosophy of the systems and fighter. Within context, the train in the anime is a manifestation of humanity's potential to harness the various elements in a combination of coal-fired external combustion locomotive, harnessing stone-fueled water and fire to drive metal into locomotion, pulling a finely furnished set of passenger cars toward their goals as fast as lightning. That's beautiful.
That's fucking epic. I love it.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that you're willing to try to translate the beauty of anime to us, as blind as we are.
Blind intentionally so. All right. Next we have Loonwise, who says, for me, it would have to be Snowpiercer. You guys covered it very well a year or so ago. It was almost thought of being alive. Oh, okay. I can't read right now. It was almost thought of being alive, having a head and a tail, but really was just piloted by the evil genius's team. If it had AI, it could have easily been as mad and dangerous as Blaine the Pain. Yeah.
I mean, it does. It is kind of an evil train if you think about it. I like it. All84001 says, technically Blaine is a monorail. Is a mono considered a train? Why am I even asking? I don't care. Trains are dumb. I never understood the appeal. And thankfully, my daughter wasn't ever interested in Thomas or any of that insufferable garbage that it seems all my nephews are obsessed with. Blaine is a pain, and that is the truth. I guess if I had to pick a second favorite train, it would be the one from the Simpsons episode where they get a monorail in Springfield. Classic era Simpsons. Endlessly quotable. But this non sequitur exchange between Homer and Marge is my favorite. Homer, there's someone here who says he can help you.
Oh, am I supposed to be doing the other one? Batman?
No, he's a scientist.
Batman's a scientist.
It's not Batman.
I haven't seen this episode in years, and I still know exactly how that exchange went.
Batman's a scientist. No, that's maybe one of my favorite episodes. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is how pop culture works. I watched this entire episode and loved the shit out of it, and then only after watching The Music Man with my wife like 4-5 years ago realized that it was just a Music Man spoof. And
I didn't realize that ever until now. So
it's just a complete spoof of the musical The Music Man.
Okay.
About a guy who comes to a town to sell them on a marching band.
Yeah.
And this, it's a monorail instead. So yeah, like the monorail song is almost identical to You Got Trouble, which is the song from Music Man.
The Simpsons is extremely literary.
It's so, yeah, it is. It really is. Or it was. Let's say it was.
I blocked someone on Twitter today for saying that The Simpsons is lowbrow. Anyway, yes, the monorail. Good answer.
All right. Drugs Possum says, little engine that could gang represent. Short and sweet.
Yeah, that's a good train. The Amazing Duck 42 says, this is a real world train running from Williams, Arizona up to the Grand Canyon. Lots of history and historic refurbished cars. Your ticket gets you snacks, some live music and storytelling, some train related tchotchkes. About halfway through the ride, the train comes to a stop and you're boarded by outlaws who are then defeated by the passengers on board. It is so much fun, especially if you go with kids. There's just something slightly magical about trundling down tracks that have been in service since 1900 that you're not going to get driving in a car. And if I'm breaking the rules by doing a real world train, then my second favorite train is obviously the Power Rangers train Megazord. Obviously, that's the only correct answer.
There's a train Megazord?
I can't say that I remember the train Megazord, but
no, this must be newer Power Rangers.
There is a whole bunch of newer Power Rangers, like a whole bunch.
Yeah.
But that sounds incredibly fun. I'm actually really curious about the actual dynamics of how you get boarded and you have to fight people as just people who are riding the train. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Steve L says the Harry Potter train was cool, but more for the magic of getting to the station, not the train itself, which I think is a fair argument, right? The train itself is just a train. The cool parts about the train is that you go through a column in the wall, and also they give you magic frogs, and sometimes it gets invaded by evil ghoul monsters.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the earlier answers pointed out, like a lot of the actual important plot of the story happens on the train. Like that's where all these characters meet each other for the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
That's true. It's the threshold.
Yeah, it's the threshold. Good point. It's a liminal space. A train is a liminal space.
It is.
Walking Dude 22 says, I am thoroughly surprised that nobody has mentioned the Hogwarts Express.
This was maybe a comment made before 17 people did the Hogwarts Express.
Maybe so. They say, I know JK is a horrible person right now, but who didn't love Harry Potter for at least the last 2 decades? Truthfully, I have a very hard time thinking of trains that featured prominently in fiction. They say Hogwarts, Polar Express, Blade the Mono, Gorilla's Ghost Train. Yeah, that's it. The Ghost Train. That's the like the band
song
of the song. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, or maybe it's an album. I don't know. One of the two.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Gorillas. Sure. Yeah.
Trumpet Cop says one real world train that has been featured dozens of times in fiction is Angel's Flight in LA. I first read of it in Michael Connelly's book, and I've never been there, and I'm not sure it's worth going to LA for this Texan, but I love when pieces of history are kept alive for no reason other than they're neat. Connelly's Harry Bosch is a great flawed character, and the train is a perfect metaphor, intended or not, for his struggle to find balance in his life, and also his struggle against both himself and his antagonist. Totally a non-King character, but a favorite of mine. Also a prime example of a really, really great screen adaptation. That's cool.
Yeah,
I never heard of that train, but
never heard of that train either. I felt really strongly that answer should have been read in Hank Hill's voice after the comment about going to LA would be too much of a stretch. I feel you as a fellow Texan. Nothing is worth going to LA. Just Stand 8460 says, for me, it's the Polar Express. It's a magical train that exists in little kids' dreams. Or does it? I can't tell. But when a kid begins to doubt the existence of Santa, it comes along and gives you one last chance to see for yourself. The movie was great too. I watch it every year. What kid didn't want some sort of experience like that when they were wrestling with believing? Yeah, no, well, Polar Express never came for me, so.
Nope, me neither. Guess it hates me.
So I guess I hate it. I guess I hate the Polar Express.
I think someone else in their answer that I might have cut this said the Polar Express was their least favorite train of all time. So maybe you two can just battle to the death.
Yeah,
on a train.
Sounds good.
A train would be a great set piece for a battle to the death.
Yes, I see why Michael likes these things so much.
Gerardo says, not a specific train per se, but I enjoy train scenes in action movies. You have to contain space for fighting, inherent danger if the fight goes outside or on top, high speed, and lots of variations. Heading into tunnels, over the bridges, end of the line, wrong track, flip the switch, disconnect the cards, including movies such as Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones, Shanghai Noon, and many, many more. Thank you, someone, for mentioning the train from Indiana from Mission Impossible, which is one of the greatest action set pieces of all time, because they put a helicopter in a tunnel with a train.
That scene still makes me just like grin like a child when the helicopter goes into the tunnel, and then everything after that point is just perfect.
So, that movie rules.
It does. It's just such a good, and it holds up like perfectly. It's like it's exactly the same experience as when I watched it in the theater when I was a kid, basically.
Red light, green light.
The music is great. Such good music.
So good.
All right, Lord of Chains says 40 years ago, old engine 25 was heading for the station when the engineer went mad and drove his train off the tracks. They never saw him or the train again. Some say he drove it straight to Midtown, downtown, all the way downtown, straight down to the fire underworld. Every year on the anniversary of its last ride, Engine 25 comes back, the mad engineer at the throttle. He's on his way to the old train station to pick up unsuspecting passengers. They say, I'm quoting, of course, from the classic Hey Arnold episode, The Haunted Train, which managed to really spook me out as a kid, right up there with the Headless Cabby episode.
God, I used to love Hey Arnold. I loved that show.
Yeah,
I think I was too old for it by the time we got cable and I was able to watch Nickelodeon, but it didn't let it stop me.
Yeah, I certainly never saw this episode. Cool.
Steve D says, have to go with Back to the Future 3. I loved the whole Wild West setting. Marty and Doc Brown robbing the train, then using it as vessels to hit 88 miles per hour. And then the ending. A big, beautiful train takes to the skies. Such a good ending to a fun film franchise. Steve, as we've already discussed, is 100% correct about everything they just said here.
Absolutely. Stuck the landing on that franchise for sure.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with the train. All right, Jennifer D says, you'll have to bear with me. Both my parents passed away when I was in my 30s. So now in my 40s, anything that brings me back to them are my favorite memories. I was born the year that the Eagles album Desperado came out. We sang that album on every single car trip, during every yard cleanup, and even at bedtime my whole life. The album is the real life story of the Dalton gang in the Old West from the beginning to end, and is still my favorite. I sang along to the entire thing just this morning. There's a song called Saturday Night, and no matter how hard I grasped for a better answer to your question, the only train that kept nagging at me was a line from that song. The years brought the railroad, it ran by my door. Now there's boards on the windows and dust on the floor. She passes the time at another man's side, and I pass the time with my pride. It sums up how technology continues to change us, especially that the technology designed to bring us closer together actually secludes us. It was the railroad 150 years ago, and it's social media and Zoom meeting that are doing it today. I know I'm way off on multiple tangents, but this is my train. Also, my dad gave me my first Stephen King book, It, when I was 11, so it all comes full circle in the end. Wow. That was an unexpectedly powerful answer in the midst of
we have a bunch of jokey answers about Back to the Future and Harry Potter, and then we get that beautiful and profound answer. So thank you very much for that, Jennifer.
Yeah, appreciate
that. Eric T says, which I'm sure he's thrilled to be followed by that. Patricia the Mono. More seriously, it's probably a train that makes up the opening section of Resident Evil 0. Zombies, monster leeches, a 20-foot scorpion, all in a fancily claustrophobic setting. Great tone setter. Yes, we need to talk about the fact that train levels in video games are the best levels. It's just a fact. Uncharted 2, train level rules. Resident Evil 0, great train. That's all I can think of right now. But trains on video games, it's great.
Yeah, I can think of a few trains. You start out Half-Life 2 on a train. I know that.
Yeah, it's more of a monorail.
Yeah. Can think of some trains. Yeah. Anyway, that's a good point. Train levels, because there's linearity, which is convenient for video games.
But there's
actually.
also dynamic because like was said earlier, like is the train going off the track? Are things jumping onto the train? You can go up on top of the train, but you can also go around the sides of the train, and then you can disconnect cars, and then helicopters can come into your train tunnel, and then you have to battle them.
Uh-huh.
Oh man.
There's actually there's actually a train sequence in Half-Life Alyx, which is much scarier because it's VR. And there's like headcrab guys like trying to get on the train, and then you're like, but you like go to a different door and get out, and then shoot them from behind and stuff. It's pretty
train levels.
Train levels. Yeah. Wow. All right. Last answer from Sigma. Despite being a massive weeb, I can't really name any trains, and we all know Japan is top 5 in train transit. But I remember playing Persona 3 when I was 12 and being stunned by the train the protagonist takes his very first day of school. I grew up in the U.S., a country with a decimated public transport system in favor of car dependency and urban sprawl for the pockets of the auto and fossil fuels industries. So seeing that train blitz over the water in a different part of the island felt so magical. There's also the very beginning of the game where the train gets delayed. In the anime movie, it's because someone committed suicide via train. And the dark hour begins. I don't know what that is. Also, there's a train you can suplex in Final Fantasy VI. And I've always loved how Cloud Strife escapes Shinra soldiers by literally hopping on a train in Final Fantasy VII. That's true. That is a cool train scene. It's so many cool video game train scenes.
Finally, Sigma, we understand each other. You have an answer that I can directly relate to. Final Fantasy 6 and 7. Awesome trains.
Yeah, I'm seeing that meme with like one muscle arm says anime and one muscle arm says Japanese inspired video games, and then in the middle is just trains. Anyway, yes, trains so cool.
Trains are great. The end. That was good. Thank you everyone for your answers. The jokey and the serious and everything in between. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But what are we doing for our question next week, Matt?
Next week, the question is bad dads.
You got to just read everything as it's written. You can't like just put that in context, Matt.
Sometimes I like to throw you a curveball, buddy. You know, Morgan Sloat, he's a pretty shitty dad. There's actually a lot of bad dads in Stephen King. There's a lot of bad dads in fiction.
Yeah, people write about shitty dads a lot.
Yeah. So favorite with, I guess, quotes around it. Mm-hmm. Bad dad in fiction.
Yeah.
And there's like a billion different angles you can go with this too, because like some dads are just real bad, and then some dads are like Homer Simpson. Is Homer Simpson a bad dad?
I would say he's a pretty bad dad.
He's certainly bad sometimes, but his heart's in the right place, depending on what season you're talking about. Depending on if you're like season 1 through 8.
Sure.
But anyway,
I think every time we reference The Simpsons, we have to specify that we're talking about seasons 1 through 8.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe when did it start? Is it like, I think that the nadir was 7 or 8.
I don't remember because my kids watch a lot of the newer episodes now, and I regret to admit that some of them are actually growing on me.
Why do I always use the word nadir wrong? I always, in my head, it always goes to the peak, but it's the low point.
It's the low point.
I don't know why I do that.
I don't know why you do that.
That stupid brain.
Sorry, my condolences.
The nadir of The Simpsons is now?
It's wherever now.
Right now?
Yeah. But anyway,
dads.
You could go way worse than Homer Simpson is my point. We're not, I'm not meaning to prime anyone in any particular direction.
Yeah, I've got quite a few answers in my head already for this, so hopefully you guys do as well. We like writing about bad dads. I think Stephen King specifically likes writing about bad dads because he did not have one.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, but that is going to do it for us this week on Kingslingers. Next week we will continue our journey into the Black Hotel and hopefully towards the Talisman. We'll be reading chapters 41 through 44, including our final, Matt, I don't know if you knew this, but it's the final Sloat interlude of the book. This is it.
All right. Can't wait. Remember, you can reach us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com or on Twitter at kingslingerspod. And then over on the subreddit at r/doofmedia is the place to hang out and answer the discussion question.
Subscribe.
And if you like any of our shows and you want to support them, consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. Special thanks to new patrons this week. I guess this must be a first of the month week because we got Ryan W., Tony, Hans, Anarava, and Robert B. Welcome. Wow, that's quite a slate. Welcome.
Yeah, and some of those names look familiar to me, and sometimes Patreon in the flip over to the month it fucks up and makes people that are existing patrons show up as I don't. There's no way of confirming that, so I just pulled them anyway. But if you're not new, well, you get a shout out anyway. Hello, welcome.
Well, yeah, welcome regardless. Welcome back, if not, yeah.
Subscribe. Of course, if you cannot afford to donate to us right now, that is absolutely okay. Please continue to share this podcast. We see you guys on Twitter when you add us in recommending us to someone, and we really, really do appreciate that. Please keep that stuff up. And of course, you can always leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. This week's Spotlight review comes from Del Boca Vista 2, who gives us 5 stars and says, Kingslingers, this is my 4 special podcast. Short, sweet, to the point, and wonderful considering how far over we're going right now. Thank you so much, Del Boca Vista. Now, for the next 2 months, Matt will be confounded as what the significance of a 4 special podcast is, even though it's pretty clear in the text right here.
What does it mean?
All right, folks, that is it for the week. We will see you right back here next week as we're so close, Matt. We're so close to the end of the Talisman. 2 more weeks. Let's do it.
All right.
Long days and pleasant nights.
And then you have twice the number.